Welcome to As-Sahwa's podcast, encouraging revival of the mind and the heart, seeking the truth and standing for what is right in the age of overloaded misinformation. RSE, Relationships and Sex Education. As far as I understand, the focus is on healthy relationship, understanding consent, sexual health and well-being, addressing risks and harm, and preparation for adulthood. Before we actually go into the topic of RSE, Yusuf, tell me about yourself.
So, Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah. My name is Yusuf Patel, and I started this work back in 2008. So I'm a father of 5 children. I live in East London, and I support parents to understand and challenge some of the things that have been taught in schools, as well as discuss these things outside of schools with their children from an Islamic perspective.
And in terms, before you kind of got into this type of advisory role, was you involved in anything else?
So I've been involved in activism since I was about 12 or 13 years old. So I've been involved in different activism projects and work for many, many years, yeah.
So Yusuf, the last couple of years there's been a lot of talk about immigration and immigrants, and we know they're talking about refugees, but deep down inside there is an element of hatred towards non-white people. Did you go to school in this country?
Yes, I did, yes.
Was you born in this country?
Yes, I was, yeah.
Yeah. Where are your parents originally from? Which country?
India.
India. And so they came, I assume, 60s, 70s?
Yeah, early 60s, yeah.
Early 60s. My dad came in 1961. Their mum came over in 1967. So you've grown up here. You understand the reality. You've been to nursery, primary school, secondary school, just like me.
Yes.
Have you always been around London?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's right, yeah.
So you understand the reality. Now, I've just kind of give a very, very brief introduction to RSE, and really looking at it, healthy relationship, addressing risks and harm, preparation for adulthood. What's the problem with it?
Yeah. I think sometimes we've got to separate the marketing from the actual reality. I get sometimes Muslims come to me all the time and say, look, what's your problem with this? Do you want our children to grow up being ignorant about these issues and that sort of thing? But look, I don't really believe children as young as 5 or 6 should be taught about sexual body parts. I don't believe that children in primary school should learn about same-sex relationships and know about different types of families, two mothers, 2 fathers. I don't want children to basically be in primary school to be taught about sex education, to understand about human reproduction. And so I think a lot of people, they assume that the marketing around the teaching of this subject mirrors exactly what's being taught. And I think and even parents of children in school, I speak to parents of children in school all the time, and they live in another world sometimes. Yeah, they don't even sometimes know that this subject exists. They don't know their children are being taught this. They don't know they have the right to withdraw. They don't ever even go to a school and ask questions about it because their understanding about it is zero. And then also there's this deep trust in the system. When we were growing up, I remember our parents used to always tell us, respect your teachers. They're there. They know. And I think we've taken that. And I can understand our parents really understood very little about the education system. They were not born in this country. They had to navigate things, they had to learn how to do things. But what's our excuse? Yeah, we were born in this country. We've got a bit more understanding about the system. And even then, there's this apathy. And my problem is that I get parents coming to me once the crisis hits their home, once the fire engulfs their home, and they start to say to me, look, my child identifies as gay, my daughter wants to be a boy, my daughter wants to leave Islam, my son wants to leave Islam, what do I do about this? And of course, at that stage, you can't say, what did you do beforehand? But the reality is that as a community, we're very poor at responding to things in a proactive way. We wait for crisis to hit us, and then we say, oh, I didn't know. And I think, one of my major problems is not only how we engage with schools, but how we raise children. I see lots of Muslim children who are not being raised, and I think maybe we can discuss this further in this podcast at different levels. But the apathy really is something we need to move away from, and actually realize that what's at stake for us and our children and our families if we don't act, and can we afford to wait until the crisis hits our home, because it hits many homes. And most of us don't know about this, because who's going to advertise that this is happening in their home, that their daughter wants to be a boy, that their son identifies as gay? I get called, like last Ramadan, I got a call from a mother who said, look, my son's Hafiz al-Quran. He's left Islam and he identifies as bisexual. And I subhanAllah, I was like, oh, so this is ajib. Yeah, this is really a strange thing, but sometimes we are almost oblivious to the consequences of living in a society that is secular liberal. There's a push for sexual freedom, and the only care is about consent. So they teach consent. If you as a boy or a girl consent to a sexual relationship, that's all that matters. There's no moral considerations whatsoever, just the legal ramifications. As long as the girl consents to the boy consents to the girl. And then I speak to non-Muslims who say, look, I remember I used to speak to non-Muslim activists, Catholic activists, who used to stand outside these abortion clinics. And they used to say to me, look, we stand outside bearing witness. This is before the law came into being that stopped this exclusion zone outside, the buffer zone outside these clinics. But before that, they were outside speaking to people. And they said, look, most of the girls that come to, and this is East London, most of the girls that come to these clinics are hijab-wearing girls.
Really?
They've committed zina. Yeah, they've committed zina with their boyfriend. Their parents completely oblivious. They're going to school, they're coming back, they're getting good results. Oh, really? My daughter's doing really well. They're committing zina. They go to the school and they say to the school, oh, I'm pregnant, but I don't want this child because I'll get in big trouble. The school takes them to the abortion clinic. They get an abortion. They come back. The parents are not informed.
Well, hold on 1 second. Are you actually suggesting that a school would get involved?
They do.
And assisting under a certain age?
Yeah,
15?
obviously they could be 13, 14, 15.
Wow.
But in law, they can support a child to get an abortion, and the parents have no obligation to know, no right to know. So they can go in the morning, get the abortion, come back, go home, and the parents are oblivious. They've been to school, they've been learning their national curriculum subjects, they're preparing for GCSEs, but that's it. They don't know anything more about that.
Yusuf, just before we carry on,
Yes.
In my days of school, and I'm assuming your days as well, I don't remember sex education being taught at a primary school age. Now, what's the primary school? I always forget the years. They say, what years would that be?
So basically, that's from the age of like 5 to 11.
Right, okay. So I don't remember them discussing these issues.
Yeah, no, they didn't.
So are we saying now, well, when I got introduced to sex education, it was in secondary school.
Yes.
Right? It was explicit, but even then, it was to an extent.
Yes.
Right? I went to an all-boys school.
Yeah.
So we were able to discuss with our teachers and what have you.
Yeah.
Now, what's surprising in what you're saying here now is that it's being taught at what age?
Yeah. So let me just give you an example. When I was in secondary school, I remember my father got a letter back from school to say, look, we're going to teach this to your child. It's a really important part of growing up. And this was probably when I was about 13. Yeah, and in secondary school, she's going to be taught this, and actually at that time, the school, which was actually quite unique at that time, asked the parents to consent to those classes, because at that time it wasn't statutory. There was no real need to consent. The school could just teach it, and if parents wanted to withdraw, they could withdraw. But they asked for consent. So my father, trusting in the school, thinking, the school's got my child's best interests at heart, then he signed it, sent it in. My father, fluent English speaker, completely understood what the letter was saying. There wasn't any language issues that stopped him from understanding what he was consenting to. But he thought, okay, he's going to be taught this. It must be in his best interest. Trust the school. Completed the form, sent it in. We had mixed. It was a secondary school which had boys and girls, but this class had our class was separated by sex, so male and female. So we were in other boys, and our class was delivered by the Jack the Lad PE teacher. Literally, this was a PE teacher who the first activity he did was you all got a sheet of paper in your groups on your table. And you got some pens. Write as many rude words as you can think of.
What the heck? What for? I don't understand it. I mean, rude words to say what?
Well, he's a PE teacher, so his understanding of pedagogy is probably quite weak anyway. Yeah, he's used to just overseeing cricket and football and hockey.
Yeah.
So he said, okay, let's find a exciting way. And obviously, teachers would then mirror their own personal morality with what they will teach. Yeah, and so obviously, he wasn't married. Yeah, I'm sure he had either a girlfriend or many girlfriends on the go. I don't think he ever spoke about his private life, but I would assume that someone like that, by the way he spoke about sexual relationships, he didn't speak about commitment, family, he didn't speak about marriage. He just spoke about almost the mechanics and the rude words, explaining whatever and this and that and what's natural. It's natural to touch yourself. It's all these sort of things, yeah. And I remember in another class we had, which is a science class, they showed an actual video of a sexual relationship in the class, a video. And I remember one boy in the class fainted because he was so shocked by this. And we were all quite shocked. There was no heads up.
Very explicit.
Yeah, this is going to happen, and it just suddenly happened. And, oh my goodness! It's like, the reality is that sort of, even at that time, that sort of video, if it was shown on TV, the television company would be fined for that. Yeah. If an adult gave that video to a child, they'd be prosecuted. Yeah, for grooming. Yeah. This would be considered to be unacceptable. But the school teaching it is considered education. They will teach it. But what they're teaching in what they taught in secondary school back 20 years ago, they're now teaching in primary schools. And that's the issue. That's the problem. Yeah. So when they teach about masturbation, they teach about that in primary schools. When they teach about and you think about these children have no understanding and should have no understanding of what is sexual at that age. Yeah. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah. These are prepubescent children. They've got no understanding of what is sexual, but society has sexualized them, and nobody considers that to be a problem. Yeah, it's we're educating children to understand. Back in the day, back 20 years ago, they were talking about this is part of a teenage pregnancy strategy, trying to stop children from getting pregnant, and we need to teach them these things to enable them to understand that these relationships could lead to a pregnancy, and so that was the initial push. Now is that idea of teenage pregnancy and reducing teenage pregnancy that's been out the window for over 12, 15 years now.
Let me just stop you there, because you just pinpointed something that I was going to actually mention.
Yeah.
And looking at the statistics from 1998 up until 2023, I believe it was.
Yes.
They said that there was a massive decline in teenage pregnancy.
Yes.
However, there was a massive incline in abortions.
Yes.
So the fact is that activity is still going on.
Yeah.
The only thing is, what's becoming easier are abortions.
Yes.
So if you, as a society, as a school, going to link the issue of relationship and responsibility,
yes,
you're not doing a really good job. Because why are teenage girls still going to have that issue of abortion? The other thing, interestingly, what I realized is that looking again at statistics, the UK birth rate has actually fallen.
Yes. It has, yeah.
So it's like, okay, what exactly is going on here? Whereas the opposite, such as continents like Africa,
yes,
the birth rate is increasing.
Yes. So I think the problem with society is that it looks at problems from a freedom perspective. Yeah. So every individual, secular liberal society says, first of all, that God doesn't matter. Yeah. God should not be the source for defining public morality. Individual morality is fine. You can decide for yourself. So God doesn't matter. Neither does looking at, when governments make laws that allow people to do things that were hitherto disallowed. So, for example, a man marrying a man, a woman marrying a woman, for example, gay marriage, for example, or reducing the age of consent from 18 to 16, or banning marriage from 16 to 18-year-olds until the age of 18, say marriage can't happen at 16, only 18. They only look at it from a freedom perspective or a very like a narrow perspective on the issue, but they don't look at what are the societal consequences of our decisions. And nobody is there. There's no government department looking at, okay, if that law is passed, if that law is passed, what are the consequences on the whole of all these policies being passed? And so the reality is that the destruction of the family, the move away from marriage, the push to for people to just live a life where they're working and they're having like married different partners or whatever, and they focus on their careers, and then later on in life they maybe think about marriage, and by the time maybe women who think about marriage later or have a committed relationship, they're over age of 40, they don't have the ability to have children, or it becomes much more difficult at that age. You know, what's consequences of in society of this reduced birth? They said the birth rate's gone to a level where it can't be restored now. It can't go back to a level where it needs to be for us to have enough people to do the jobs that are required to be done in the society. And therefore, there's a big push from, you know, the same people who are not getting married, the same people who are attacking Islam and say Islam is this, Islam is that, that mosque is being, that church is being turned into a masjid or whatever, are the same people who don't go to church, don't get married, don't have children, and now they are the ones who are actually the victims of this society because they can't find a partner and so all their pent up rage and dissatisfaction with society has been diverted from where it should be on a state that's failed them to not to the rich who are exploiting them, but to the Muslims who are given this imaginary power that these people are the ones who are causing your problems. And I think these people are really are victims as much as everybody else. They spend their time on X, on Twitter, attacking Muslims and this. Well, look what they're doing. Going to these asylum hotels and demonstrating outside of them. You know, the reality is they should just embrace if they embrace their religion, yeah? Okay, if they don't want to embrace Islam, they have too much baggage there. Embrace your religion, your Christianity which you weaponize to score points against other people, but you don't actually embrace it, yeah? And then get married, have children, you know, live a stable life. Men need that, yeah? Men and women need to live a life where they are married, especially men, to get some stability and some level of anchored groundedness, yeah. And so now we all have all these men who are single causing havoc in society. Either they are involved in criminality or they're involved in like extremes of far right activism. But what they're going to achieve? They're being exploited to be weapons for people like Stephen Yaxley Lennon, yeah, Lemon probably better thing, but Tommy Robinson, Tommy 10 names, yeah. The problem is that these people are exploiting these young people. They're getting their income. They're able to go on holiday like 12 times a year, yeah, and these young people then are still their life hasn't changed. They're not getting any a better job. They're not having a relationship. They're not getting any contentment in life than they had before. But they feel as though their rage has been directed to the actual problem. But I think that's why when I say to Muslim parents, look, whenever our children start to feel as though, look, we're living in a society where, you know, we've got so many restrictions on us, and the people around us have so much freedom. I say, look, we need to point out the reality of the existence of most people in this life. Most people are not satisfied, are not happy. They're not content. There's a huge surge in mental health problems. Yeah, there's a huge dissatisfaction in the way people are living. Yeah, there's a lack of understanding from men and women as to how they should relate to each other, because it's been completely, they don't know what they can do, what they can say, what they can't say. You know, if it's completely, there's a complete destruction of any sort of order or stability, and that comes from God, that comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that comes from getting contentment in your purpose, and living a life which gives you some level of security and stability which they don't have. And so you should, as parents, point out how we have been are so fortunate to live a life of where we're grounded in a deen which takes away from us our ability to make our own decisions about what we think is good for us, because we have no clue. I was speaking to somebody the other day. I said, look, imagine if this always happens. Yeah, somebody, some politician says something, and then like 2 years later they say, but you, and they say something else. Then you say that 2 years ago, something else. I said, no, I didn't say that. And then the tweet, the evidence, the receipts are out there now. They show that. I said, oh, I don't even remember saying that. This is how human beings are. We can't even from the year to year understand what we said or discern what we said. And yet we believe we know what's best for us. We have no clue. And therefore, this is the issue. We need to, as parents, remind our children how blessed we are with Islam, and how people are deserving of this guidance. They need this guidance in the rest of society.
Yeah. Jazakallah khair. Couple of things, really. Well, first thing, you heard about Mr. Tommy, no name,
Yes.
who got deported from Colombia.
Yes.
Right, on his holiday. He was about to get deported from Panama. However, the center-right mayor of Panama City got him in. Strange thing is, he ended up being a Zionist as well. So that's a separate thing. You mentioned issue of religion. Now you've mentioned about Islam quite often now. So for those that are watching and listening, it's clear that you're coming from a very religious perspective. But before we talk about it from an Islamic side, have you had any interactions with other religious communities, such as Christians, on this issue of the RSE?
Yeah, I get this question so often. You know that I've spoken to Christians, evangelicals. I've spoken to Catholics, some Jewish people about these issues in the past. The reality is, Catholics on the whole have adopted Western liberal morality norms. Yeah. Now, generally, in unless you're very, very Catholic, religious Catholic, which is a minority, most Catholics are cultural Catholics. They will have sexual relations before marriage. They would maybe consider marriage after being involved in a relationship with somebody else. Even within the Catholic Church, there have been big controversies here and there, again and again over the years about whether what is the status of LGBTQ people within the church. Yeah, how do we deal with them? And they're in knots around this subject because they know what the biblical teaching is, but then they live in a society where there's dwindling numbers of congregants in the church, and therefore you've got to try and broaden out your appeal to as wide an audience as possible. Similarly to the Church of England. Church of England has lost its completely. It never actually had any moral fibre on these issues. Yeah, it was back in the 1960s when homosexuality was decriminalised. The Church of England was the first one before anybody else to say we should decriminalise it. Yeah, you got this whole controversy in the Church of England about gay bishops, which nearly tore apart the church between the African church, who are more conservative, and the Western church, which is more liberal. And so the adherents of these churches, really, there's a minority of Catholics and a minority of Christians who believe in the same values as we do. Yeah. And especially a lot of the evangelicals don't want to work with Muslims. That's the reality. I went to a conference once where it was in Poland, actually, a 2-day conference talking about these issues. I thought, let's try and make some inroads, because another Muslim said, look, I go to this conference. I've been to this a couple of years. Let's go and see what we can do to work with people. I said, yeah, absolutely. If anybody from any other faith wants to work on a common ground, on an issue we agree upon, absolutely fine. They said, no, we don't work with anybody who doesn't believe in Jesus. And I thought, yeah, you're going to die out within the next generation. Who's going to take over the mantle? And then you're going to be, you're going to have no, you're basically sacrificing your arm to protect your eyebrow. Really, it's like you're sacrificing so much for something so small as what you claim you want to achieve. And then the Jewish people, most Jewish children go to Jewish faith schools, so they're not really concerned about this issue. And so, really, we have very few allies within the non-Muslim community around these issues, and that's why I say that. Look, the reality is that Muslims are the ones who we need to work with, because the reality is that, look, we've got a huge Muslim population. And unless we work on this Muslim generation, these next couple of generations, we're going to lose probably the majority of these next 2 generations. The reality is, as immigrant communities live longer in a country to which they've come to after a couple of generations, every generation there is a new cohort of this migrant community that first came. The more they lose their culture, they lose their background, their religion. It happened with all the previous migrants. Yeah, and so the reality is, what I say to parents: look, to be honest, we are, and masajid organizations, everybody, we're living we're living in a state of priorities which are misplaced. You go to some of these masajid, and you struggle to find any child. I go all over the country. I go to different masajid, yeah, and I go on the weekend usually to do events, yeah. And weekend you're more likely to see young people, isn't it? Because they're not at school. But a lot of these masajid, you struggle to see any young children at these masajid. And so, who are going to be the pillars of these? And you have another masjid every other day, another masjid being set up, yeah, and all our communities focus on is putting money into more and more masajid. We haven't even invested in the community, invested in the youth, invested in the basics of creating a strong Muslim community. And we still focused on building more and more masajid, not institutions, because it's not institutions, they're masajid, that where you pray and you go home and very little happens in between. And so really we're failing our community. We're failing our young Muslims, and actually it's because there's a detachment between our older generation and the youth, where there's a real lack of understanding as to the real world in which they live, and there's an obliviousness towards that, and saying, everything we find, we went through the schooling system and everything was fine for us, so it would be fine for them. And I really think this attitude is something that needs to be really shot out of the water. It's not befitting of this great ummah to carry these complacent ideas about the future generation and not invest in them.
Yusuf, going to come back to this
yes.
part of the discussion. We mentioned the issue of Christians, but what about people like Hindus and Sikhs? Are they not concerned about this issue?
I've never seen Muslims in a school in any area where Hindus and Sikhs, when they've approached them, have been, let's work together on this issue.
You don't think that they would be concerned about this?
Not concerned enough to do anything about it.
Right.
I've never faced a situation where there are. Maybe there's a small case here and there, but it's been very difficult. I say to parents, look, try and establish contact with anybody who agrees on these issues and work together with other parents from any background. Don't see it as a weakness, that's a strength. Yeah. And there's nothing wrong in working with Christians or Sikhs or Hindus or Buddhists or anyone on these issues. But and the thing is, the problem is that the people who come to me and say, let's do this, I've never tried it. And once they try it, they say, oh yeah, actually they don't respond. Yeah, so I say to everybody, look, you try it. I don't discourage anybody from that, but I say in my experience, we've tried to work with so many different other communities, and I found it difficult to work with any of them. And so I think, we need to awaken the Muslim community. We've got numbers enough to be able in schools to be able to make an impact. And therefore, I think we should see it as our role to be working on behalf of all children. So I say to parents, look, you're not working for your children or Muslim children. You're working for all children. You're working to safeguard them from things because they're all, at the end of the day, they're all Muslim, isn't it? Their fitrah is intact, isn't it? And so work on behalf of all communities in this issue, whether those communities respond in a formal show of unity or not.
Well, Tommy Lemon's going to be very upset with the statement you just made that all children are Muslim. Anyway, that's a thing on the side. Going back to your discussion about the issue of masajid,
yes,
the connection between the elderly and the young, I think we can connect to that as well, because as a child growing up, second generation, in a very white population, because I was born down in southeast London,
yes,
a difficult part of London, the racism, etc.
Yes,
the schooling was very white as well, full of hatred in there. And we dealt with it in the ways that we had to. But Yusuf, the question is really, we are living in a non-Muslim society. We are living in a Western secular society.
Yes.
Not too sure about the Christian part to it, but
No.
we can discuss that. But living in a secular society, and our parents came because there was an opportunity
Yeah.
for education, for work, and may Allah Rabbul Izzah reward them for
Ameen.
their intentions and their efforts
Yeah,
towards
yeah.
us.
Yes.
Allahumma ameen. Now, we're fathers, we're children, we're having children, we're having grandchildren now.
Yes.
So your concern is absolutely right. Wouldn't it be better for us to pack up and leave this country and go to a Muslim country to avoid this kind of RSE issues?
You know, I get this question a lot. Even every time an issue arises from Muslims, even my wife sometimes says, "Look, why are we here? Why are we here?" The issue is, I really believe that, okay, if you believe that you can't live your deen in this country, but and go to another country, but I see lots of Muslims, probably middle class Muslims, who say, "Oh yeah, I don't think this is a good environment for me," and then move to UAE, which is flip. I can't understand that. Yeah. And then there's sometimes shaitan deceives us to say it's the environment that is stopping us from living our life as Muslims. Sometimes, for example, I see even young Muslims say, "Look, if I was in Egypt or in Syria or in other country, I would learn Arabic." Yeah. The issue is, it's not your environment that stops you from doing that. It's something more deeper rooted. Yeah. I really see like a middle class Islam. I see it all the time, where Muslims are content to make their money, go on holiday 3 times a year, and just live a life which is a ritualistic sort of Islam. This is not what Muslims were meant to live by. This is not an Islam that Muslims were meant to live by. I would see that if there is some level of struggle in living your Islam, yeah, that is such a good thing. I would see that as a positive, because the Muslims of Mecca were of a different caliber than the Muslims who accepted Islam in Medina, in Yathrib. Yeah, it's the environment that where you struggle with. Even when we were younger, and we were going to school, I remember I was in college, and they didn't allow us to have a prayer room. Yeah, and they forbade us from praying in the classrooms. And even then, we prayed in the classrooms. I remember once security guards came into the class, took our stuff out. And even one of the Muslim security guards took part in that, yeah. And after that, we literally shouted in their faces, and they were so shocked. They thought they would scare us, yeah. And one of the security guards, really tough guy, came up to me and said, "Look, I want to make your life hell." And some of the other Muslims who were a bit quietist said, "Oh, look, you've caused so much fitna now, it's going to make our life more difficult." I said, "How's it going to make our life more difficult than it already is? We can't pray." Yeah? And then the next day, that security guard came up to me and said, "Oh, I'm really sorry for that." He started almost begging me for forgiveness. Yeah, but the thing is, that helped us to build our character to the extent where we thought, look, this difficulty in practicing Islam makes us appreciate our Islam more.
Yes, that's right.
And I think sometimes when we get into times of ease, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends reminders that no, this life is not of ease, and there's blessing in this. Really. And some Muslims look at the situation and say, "Oh, this is so negative, so bad." I look at it, I thought, Alhamdulillah, we are reminded of the fact that a lot of these, I remember 9/11, 7/7, all of the backlashes from this. I met so many Muslims who said, "That's when I started to live Islam."
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we undervalue this for us and our children, and we start to think that a life of ease is good for us, when actually a life of difficulty is better for us. And I think that we should stay, we should fight our corner, live our deen, protect our community, and support our community as much as possible to live this deen, and that so we have as many of our next generation who live that Islam as possible.
Yeah, there is a massive discussion, and it's been going on for years, about the issue of leaving the West, going into a Muslim country, the concept of hijrah. Okay, but really, hijrah is from a place where you would say from Darul Kufr to Darul Islam. Where is the Darul Islam in today? There isn't any. However, I know many ulama would say that you should at least try and make the effort to live in a Muslim country, and that can only happen if you have a source of work, as an example, and you're able to live in that country. I've known,
and that's why it's mainly a middle class aspiration, to be honest.
That's right, yeah.
Most Muslims are not middle class. They're not very well to do. They live paycheck by paycheck.
Yep.
Now, thinking about going abroad, unless you've got relatives in Pakistan or in another part of the world where you can go and move in with some relatives and they can support you to get on your feet. It's a distant aspiration for most people.
Yeah.
And I think, it's like, I always say the hijrah discussion is like the marriage discussion, the second marriage discussion. Those people who speak about it the most are those people least likely to do it.
Yeah. I mean, look, I know of a brother who packed up his bags.
Yes.
Him and his wife and young children, they went to Malaysia.
Okay, alhamdulillah.
Now, he's been there since January this year. As far as I understand, he's doing quite well. He's enjoying it. He's in IT, so he can work remote.
Yes.
And his wife is in a similar situation as well. How long will they last for? Allah knows, right? But majority of the brothers that I know that have left the UK or the West and gone to another Muslim country, they always seem to come back after maybe between 5 to 10 years. They always come back, and it's for different reasons. Where I work is a very non-Muslim white environment. And one of my colleagues, he was telling me that his brother has been working in UAE for the last 30 odd years. He's retired and he's come back.
Yes.
But my colleague said to me, I hate the place because I can't stand it. And I was quite surprised. So I said to him, really? I said, I've got a different reason to why I hate some of the aspects of it. But why do you hate it? And he was just like, the way it's become, the buildings,
it's like an artificial society.
It's just not real. And I said to him, but if you just go out of the cities, you'll see. He said, no, that's exactly what it is. I know that reality, but it's just that it makes me sick seeing that. So the fact is that even Muslims moving to places like that, or maybe to Egypt, maybe to Syria now, I don't know, it's a difficult thing for them to make.
But what I say is the majority of Muslims will stay here. And if you have the ability to support the community in whatever area you have, if you, for example, here we probably have more of an influence than we would if we went to Malaysia or something like that, because you're a real outsider there. Even though we're born here, we have the ability to do much more for our community. So I think it's wherever you are, wherever you have the ability to make your impact and work towards your akhirah through service to the community, you should do that here as much as possible. So I really think that for those people who want to go, they can go, absolutely, but most Muslims will not go. And so I think we need to do it as a community. And one positive, sometimes when we speak about Muslim community, we speak about negatives a lot of the time. But I remember I go around the country and I see pockets of Muslims in every single community who step up and are doing selfless work for their community to do things. And they're probably like, people forget them, don't really care about them, or they take them for granted. But they exist. There's no community in the country where there aren't people who have seen something that needs to be done and said, okay, I'll do it. They've stepped up. They say, there's no masjid in our community at all, let's build one. Or there's nothing for the youth, let's do something for the youth. Or there isn't some sort of provision for this part of the community, let's do it. And so I think the Muslim community is very fortunate to have a huge amount of skill and selflessness within it. That we probably have inherited from our forefathers who've built the initial institutions up in this country. But you see that, and you see a lot of barakah in that work. So I think there are always signs of hope amidst the bleak things happening around us. I think we need to also recognise that there are things that are positive about our community.
There's one thing you mentioned in regards to our parents and their attitude towards the schools and the teachers.
Yes.
I remember my parents saying to me that you basically don't have a case, son. What your teacher said is absolutely right.
Yes.
And I kind of call it down to what I would say is a colonial mentality, right? And in a way, that is how it's kind of been. But now that we're coming to different generations now, is a concern like you said. Thing is, Yusuf, in reality, we know about the birds and the bees, and this has been going on for centuries and centuries and centuries. But there is one issue though that I see as being a problem, and that is that the Muslim community have too much of a taboo to talk about these kind of topics.
Yeah.
And sex is not spoken about in the masajids.
Yeah.
There was an event in my local masjid, and it was called, I think, something about let's talk about sex or something like this, yeah. But what it said was, it said no under 18s. And I was just like, subhanallah, that's silly.
Yeah.
Because you're losing a connection.
Yeah.
The problem that we're having, partial problem that we're having as a society, is that it is overly sexualized.
That's right. Yeah.
Right? So you're talking about an overly sexualized society, from adverts to social media to billboards. You know, magazines, alhamdulillah, is a lot better than it was back in our days. You don't see that rubbish on those shelves anymore, right? Or it's covered, wherever it is, but you don't see that. But you've got a graphic visual on your phone. When you're on YouTube clip watching how to make a table, you got these nasty and horrible adverts that are coming up, and you're just like, I need to afford this, but you can't even afford it. You're watching it in one way or another. So children are also exposed to this. So when the scholars are not speaking to the right age, you've missed out a generation.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So now the reality is that, why are you saying over 18s only? No, you should be saying, when are you baligh? You're mature.
That's right. Yeah. But the thing is, look, I remember at a moment, over the last 6 months, I've been creating this madrasa curriculum, which covers these issues for madaris and makatib, because a lot of madaris makatib contact me and say, look, there's issues around this, can we have something? So I've been creating this. I sent it to some people to look at, and even some people who you think, oh, this person's very open to it, it's a really good idea, they would almost think, oh, look, how can we talk to children 9 or 10 about this? And I say, look, if you know what's been taught in school at that age, unfortunately, we have to teach these things earlier and sooner than we would like, because of the fact that not only what they're taught in schools, what other children in the school are showing them and teaching them, what they see in society, because it's a values free-for-all now in the society, and so we've got to recognize that this is what children are coming up against, and children will be raised, but the question is, who will raise them? Who's shaping their values, their behaviors, their thoughts around all of these issues? And it's either their friends, or it's Google, it's what they see on social media, it's all of the things that are going to give them a skewed mentality and approach that. Even things like pornography in our community is a big issue, isn't it? It's a pornography addiction. Pornography is a massive issue, and it's not ever spoken about. And so, look, I think the problem is a lot of the issues in our community are hidden, are under the radar, and you know, I still see amongst some scholars, you know, we have a genocide happening in Gaza. We have social problems happening within families, in our society, in our community, and you still see people speaking about those old issues. Oh, this is Daybandi, this is Brelvi. Oh, let's talk about Mawlid. And I think you are not fulfilling your responsibility as somebody who claims to be a person of knowledge. If that's what you focus on, then your understanding of what the community is going through and what the ummah is going through is really out of your mind. You're living like you're living in a time warp back in the 80s or 90s. You know, we need to recognize that there are issues at stake here. That the reality is, it doesn't matter whether you speak about Mawlid or not. The issue is, if your children are not going to live Islam, what does it matter? If Mawlid is not going to be an issue, isn't it? If they're not Muslim, then what does that matter? And so I think, and sometimes when I say that, people say, "Oh, you're almost making the issue into something that's greater than it is." And I say, no, it's not. I actually, most of the time when I speak about these issues, I downplay the severity of the issues. And when I get calls from parents, I'm shocked at how many calls I'm getting from parents now about my son identifies as gay, my daughter wants to be a boy, my child wants to leave Islam. And the thing is, I never say to parents, come to me to ask me questions about this, but it's because they don't have anywhere else to turn. that they come to me, and I know other imams that also get similar calls. So the reality is, this is a bigger problem than we think it is. I know of there's lots of Muslims who are growing up in their early 20s who are literally atheists, but with their families, they're going through the motions of Islam just so they don't create problems in their family. So they may live away from the home. When they come to the home, they pray. Rest of the time, they're not praying. They're not going to the masjid, not fasting in Ramadan. They're not doing anything. But just to give the semblance of Islam to their parents, they're doing that. Yeah. But essentially, they're atheists. And the thing is, we as a community have failed them because we haven't shown them that Islam is not just an inherited cultural tradition. It's the truth about why we were created. And that's why this madrasa curriculum is focusing on the foundations of these questions, as well as all these other LGBTQ sexual issues. And similarly, the next toolkit that we created a toolkit recently around RSE in schools, and next one's going to be about how to develop purpose in your children. And so I think the reality is, when I go around the country, I speak to young Muslims, young children, I say to them, why are you Muslim? The most 9 out of 10 of those children say it's because my parents are Muslim. And that's not an adequate answer.
Yeah, born into Islam.
Yeah.
More or less, yeah.
And the thing is, when you're born into Islam, you're going to grow out of it.
Yeah, very true. So, Yusuf, are you implying then that the imams and the ulama have become somewhat, got to be careful the word I use, but I'm going to use it, somewhat redundant on these issues, such as sex in Islam, and they are not talking about it enough? Are you actually saying then, even with the RSE topic, they are not dealing with it in the most appropriate way?
So I don't want to like tar all of our ulama and imams with the same brush. There are lots of good ulama who say, look, who speak about it, attempt to speak about it, and who try and work with their communities. And but there's not enough. That's a small minority. Yeah. The reality is, most we just over a week ago, we did a national khutbah day on RSE, and a lot of masajid did it, but still lots of masajid didn't do it, didn't speak about this issue.
Not enough. Not enough.
Didn't speak at all.
Right.
Yeah? And when you speak to them, they're not. It's like they got their set khutbah that they do every week. Yeah, that are not based upon the reality of the life of anybody in their congregation. Sometimes they even don't do them in English. Yeah. I would have been in an area where there's like 25 masajid, and for a time I had to go to different masajid every Friday because one masjid was doing it in Urdu, one masjid was doing it in Tamil, and I was taking my children there, and I was thinking, what is this? Yeah, this is nonsense. Yeah, you got old people who your target audience is old people who basically are living Islam, who are near to death now. You know, they don't need this guidance, this reminder, this nasiha. But you've got younger Muslims who are going there. This could be school holidays, and they're listening to something in Urdu they can't even understand. Yeah. But what I'm saying is that, look, there has to be within our imams a wake up to the reality of what our community is living by. You know, in the past, our scholars were very in tune with the reality of the people because they lived amongst the people. Today, unfortunately, a lot of our imams are living in a bubble away from the reality. And sometimes you speak to them about what's happening, and they were like, they're so shocked. They shouldn't be shocked. They're supposed to be our leaders who actually make the effort to try and understand what's happening in the community. They should people through the people coming to them and asking them questions about their daily lives. They should have developed some understanding of what people are going through, what issues are happening. But actually, most Muslims probably wouldn't go to the local imam to ask them questions about Islam. They go on social media now, isn't it? And they're going to groups to say, what's the ruling on this? And you think, why? Because nobody tells them, go to the local imam and speak about this, or they don't feel like they can do that.
Well, many people are going to Hazrat Chat GBT, which is the worst thing possible.
Yeah. But what I'm saying is, look, we need to, as a community, start to really recognize that there's a ticking time bomb in our community. Yeah, you can build the £5 million masjid. Yeah, very well decorated. Yeah, and then get next extension. In my local community, there's one organisation that it seems that their objective is just to build another masjid every other week. Yeah, I went to one khutbah and they said, we went to this local area. It's a bit further from where we are, and there wasn't a masjid within half a mile, so we built this masjid. I think half a mile. What is it, in fiqh, is that the definition of the distance that you have to calculate in order to establish a masjid?
Yeah.
Half a mile is what? Half a mile. There's a masjid half a mile on either side of that masjid. You decide to set up your own masjid. What nonsense is this?
Yeah.
And our funds are going into this for the community. Yeah, and we're not investing those funds in the youth, in their development, in anything. And so I think our priorities are completely on its head.
Yeah.
Other communities, like you said, Jewish community spends the smallest amount of their money on charity, but most of their money is on advocacy and lobbying and capacity building within their community. Yeah. Similarly to other Christian organizations, I remember when we speak about Stonewall is a secular Kafir organization that wants to normalize LGBTQ identities in society and has tirelessly worked to do that. They were established in the 90s, yeah, off the back of Section 28. When Thatcher banned Section 28, banned homosexuality from being spoken about in schools and by local councils and funding. Then Stonewall was founded off the back of that. But the thing is, they get tens of millions of pounds in funding every year.
From the government?
Yeah? No, from individuals, from private donors. They use that money for their advocacy, for their education, for all sorts of lobbying efforts, for propaganda efforts. And I remember every Ramadan, people say to me, look, we should have an organization like that in our community. We should be doing work like that. And I say to them, look, every Ramadan, I struggle to raise like just a small amount of money just to do this work. Yeah, our community doesn't value this work whatsoever. And every other week, people come to me and say, "Oh, you should do this. You should add this to that." I said, "Look, I don't have the capacity to do that. Yeah. You give me the amount of money that Stonewall has, we can do that very easily." Yeah. But as a community, our priorities are on its head. Really, are completely lost. And the only aspiration we have is build another masjid. So in my local area, within 1 mile of my house, there are about 20 masjids.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think this is really this is a problem.
Yeah. Want to come to you in regards to your organisation, but before we do that, do you think this issue of, and I'm not talking about the RSE topic or religion or anything of that nature, but generally speaking, in society, we live in a Western society, so we can only really speak about Western society. Yes. And I'm not going to compare it to Eastern society because that's a different environment altogether. Yeah, okay? But in Western society, do you think now that there is this madness regarding being masculine and being feminine, right? Or do you think that it's just like you were saying before, it's just a matter of freedom, do whatever you want as long as it's what they call legal? Now, strange thing is, what is the age of consent? 15?
16.
16, yeah. So 16, you can have a sexual relationship, but you can only get married at 18.
Yes.
So it's a bit of a contradiction, okay?
And that only changed recently. That only changed within the last year, 1.5 years.
Yeah, because I that's what I thought. It was 16, right?
It used to be 16. You could get married at the age of 16 with your parents' consent.
Now, I know in other...
In Scotland, you can still get married at the age of 16.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay, so in other parts of Europe, I heard that it's low as 12, 13. Okay? But what I'm trying to get is how is society perceiving sexual relationship now? Okay? It seems to me it's like a night out, right? You're going for a dinner, and that's how sexual relationship is seen now. Yeah. Okay, it's not seen. The fundamental part of a sexual relationship is family.
Yes,
that's what builds a society. Is that not being taught in RSE?
The reality is, in society now, most children's understanding of sexual relationships are shaped by what they see in popular culture, Netflix series, books they may read, but mainly what they see on television. And if you look at the average teen sort of program aimed at a teen audience, a sexual relationship is just seen as the concept you get, the idea that a child will get watching that is that it's absolutely normal for someone to meet someone for the first time, have a sexual relationship with them when they go back to their place, and in the next morning just depart as if nothing happened. This hookup culture, it's what they call hookup culture, where you have casual relationships without any sort of commitment, and that's the way you function. And then at some point you may meet somebody who you like and you want to spend a bit more time with, then you move in with them. And then if you want extra commitment, then you end up getting married. But marriage is seen as the last thing after you move in and you live together.
Even maybe have children as well.
Yeah, and your children attend your wedding. This is it's complete, and even that is the good relationships that are happening.
Right.
But there's children, even grown-ups in this country, who don't know who their father is. There's the impact of society on this type of a lifestyle is that there are grown men and women who don't know who their father is. And actually, the reality is, the idea of wanting to know who your father is, your lineage, is deeply within your fitrah. That you don't have to have a religious understanding to want to know that. There's children who are either adopted or in foster care, and then they grow up and they search for their parents, because they have this yearning to know I want to know who my father is. I want to know who my mother is. I was given up for adoption when I was just born. I want to know who they are. There's examples of grown men and women who grow up without knowing their fathers, and they end up having a sexual relationship, and they find out their fathers are the same. And you think this is and there was a situation where there was a woman and man who found out that they had obviously different mothers but the same father, because they had the DNA test and whatever, and they found out they had the same father, and in the end they said, look, we're so committed to each other that we're going to stay boyfriend and girlfriend. But the issue is, what I'm saying is that the whole, the normality for our children is what they see around them. And so marriage is not normal anymore. Marriage is abnormal. When I got married, I remember I got married 21 years ago. Alhamdulillah, I got married 21 years ago. When I was at work, I went into work, I was in work, and I said, I'm getting married in end of July. And they said, oh, okay, when did you meet your wife? I said, oh, we met through friends who introduced us. And obviously they realized that we didn't live together. We hadn't had a sexual relationship. And they were like, I could see they were talking behind their back. They were like, what is this? This is so odd. But their grandparents would have lived that life where they would have, they would not have lived with their partner before they got married. So within 2 generations, the norm in society has changed. But what we're saying is, look, for our children, their norms are being shaped by the society around them. So what they watch on TV, the idea that you can just have a sexual relationship with somebody you just met, a stranger, and then the next day you find somebody else, this casual hookup culture, and it's not normal to get married. You get married when you're older and you're ready, and you've been around the block a few times, and then you found somebody who you want to live the rest of your life with. All of these things are shaping our children's understanding of normality. And so we've got to disrupt that normalization process by first of all, modeling marital relationships that make marriage attractive to them. If they live in a household where the marital relationships are broken, they are the mother and father, the husband and wife are always in conflict with each other, then how is marriage attractive to them? They're going to think, why should I get married? I don't want to get married and marry someone like my father who's just going to treat my mother like a doormat and not treat her like she should have. I don't want to be treated like that. And then, the society then says to the girls especially is that, look, get educated, go into work, and then you seek careers. And this is happening in the Muslim community. And then those people who are the Muslim girls are getting better educated than Muslim boys. And then the Muslim girls, when they get into their late 20s, 30s, they start to think about marriage. They can't find anybody on their level. So they say, oh, I can't, who can I find? I can't find any Muslim man who's my level. And then the Muslim man says, I don't want to marry those people because they don't have, they have a bit, maybe feminist tendencies about them. Yeah. I don't want to marry someone like that who thinks marriage is like a equal thing between a man and a woman. And if I say to do something, she's not even going to listen to me because she thinks, no, a man and woman are equal in every single way, who doesn't understand or appreciate or want to live a life of Islam. And then they get married abroad. So then there's all these women who are in their 30s and 40s who have never got married. And then some of them say, okay, I'm going to just get married to that non-Muslim man. At least he's on my level. I'll get some intellectual stimulation through conversation. There's somebody on my level that I can't find in the Muslim community. It's creating problems in our community, huge problems. And so I think we've got to, in our children, there's got to be, first of all, a modelling of marriage which makes it attractive to both boys and girls. And then also what we've got to do is ensure that we prepare our children for marriage. Because, a lot of the times a boy and a girl get married and they're not prepared for marital life. You're starting to have these premarital courses, which is a good idea, actually, to start thinking about what marriage means in terms of responsibilities. The rights are not that important initially. The responsibilities are more important than rights. Although rights should be understood within the marital relationship, but responsibilities is something that needs to be understood because the society is so focused on rights over responsibilities. And so I think we've got to, as a community, really raise our children to aspire to marital life. Otherwise, we're going to lose this. And as you said, marital life is the foundation for family life. And the vast majority of the everyday living of Islam in society is through a family life, is through family living. The fiqh is based upon family life. And so if we lose that, we lose a core of Islam. And if you think about it, when I speak to non-Muslims, I remember I used to work with this Catholic organization sometimes, maybe 10 years ago, and they were saying, look, we look at you as a community, as a Muslim community, and we are in awe of you that you've still held on to marriage, family. You look after your parents when they go old. You don't just put them in old people's homes. You have respect for the elderly. You have this and these basic values around family. We really are envious of you because of that. This is one of our, in a society where family has become completely dead, even the way we live our family life is a form of da'wah to the rest of society. And I think we need to think about how are we living that? Are we taking it for granted, or are we living a life which actually makes Islam an attractive option? Because if I think about it, look, there's so many things that Islam has said not to do to me. That I remember if I was non-Muslim, I drank, I went to the pub or drank at home, and I could see that my life would be like a disaster. I'd probably beat my wife. I probably don't get into fights, become a football hooligan or whatever. Islam prohibited us from things because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows those things, if we did them, would make our life problematic, would make our life worse. So He knows what's best for us. And we've got to teach it to our children that, look, sometimes you can't see that what you've been deprived of isn't deprivation. It's blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I think we need to show, when you look at non-Muslims who become Muslim and they look back upon the life they led and they think, look, I was leading this life where I was just basically aimless. And then I became Muslim and I got this sense of responsibility, this understanding of worship of God, and I feel a contentment I've never felt before. But because we're born in the Muslim families, our children are born to Muslim families, they don't ever get that. So they can't see the other side. And the other side, the grass is greener. It seems very attractive. But if you break it down, it's actually a disaster. It's a life which is a life of sadness, depression, and really it's an animalistic existence.
You mentioned something about Muslim women following careers and what have you. I remember speaking to a Muslim lawyer, and he was talking about the issues of divorce and the rate of divorce and how it's increased. And he said, look, a lot of those divorces were because of the fact that the wives did not want to stay home. They wanted
Yes.
to progress in
Yeah,
their
yeah.
career.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Now, there's a couple of ways we can look at this. Is it totally prohibited for a woman to work? I know there's difference of opinion in ulama. However, you look at the urf of the society and society we live in, is that it's a normal kind
Yeah,
of thing,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And even at the time of the Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, women did work.
Yeah.
You know, they did work, but their work was very different.
Yes.
But reality is they did work.
Yes.
Now, there is a big push of those career-led women, Muslim women we're talking about, are looking towards marriage. And like you rightly said, they are not finding someone on their type of level
Yeah.
or somebody they can converse with.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And their option is only to go towards a non-Muslim or a non-practicing Muslim.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so we have to cater for this, and this is where I believe there's a detachment between Imam Sahib, who's on the mimbar, and society.
Yeah.
Because he's not engaging
Yeah.
in society as a whole,
Yes.
and not specifically with the community, the Muslim community. So he doesn't really understand the reality of what's
Yeah,
going on,
yeah.
and this is a big problem
Yeah.
that we're facing. Yusuf, coming back to your work and what you're doing, before we speak about your
Yes.
organization,
Yeah. Yes.
in terms of your work, so you're doing workshops, you're doing talks, you're doing
Yes.
media.
This year, what we're doing is we're doing a few things. One, we're trying to find as many ways of engaging parents in the lost art and responsibility of raising children, because unfortunately there are a lot of Muslim children who are growing up who aren't being raised or being raised by society. Yeah, so their basic understanding of Islam and their basic behavior is not. It's just like everybody else. It's very selfish, individualistic, very much about what my rights are, my freedom. Yeah, and the core ideas of Islam, which are really inculcated not through necessarily lessons, but through modeling of behavior. You know, this tarbiyah. Tarbiyah is like a process of nurturing where somebody learns from your character by being surrounded by character, isn't it? And so if we as parents are not showing selflessness, if we, like, even simple thing, you walk down the road, I walk down the road in the morning, I take my daughter to like a home education center. There's Muslim parents with their children. You walking down the road, there's like a narrow road, and they are sometimes they're on their phone. Yeah, so they're not even looking where they're going, and they're bumping into people, and they're causing disruption for people, which is actually problematic anyway. Yeah, because what is that saying to children? That almost like I'm like glued to my mobile. I can't even have a conversation with my children on the way to school. But secondly, you're actually teaching your child that when you're walking down the street and somebody is coming next to you, even if there's a pushchair, you don't worry about giving them space. You just go through, and then they have to find their own way. It's like a very individualistic, selfish way of living. Yeah, and this is because society is not, first of all, society is shaping our behavior, and parents are not doing anything to disrupt that. They're not reinforcing that with our values. They may be dressed as Muslim, but their behavior is anything but. After Jummah, for example, I go to the outside Jummah, and sometimes young Muslims, they want to congregate, they want to speak to each other. There's no problem with that whatsoever. But they're blocking the whole pavement. They're like doing a halaqah on the pavement.
Yeah.
And the thing is, the masjid that I go to, the people who are in the masjid who are looking after stewarding, they don't even say to them, look, can you move to the side? We can't block. So I go to them and I say, look, brothers, please, you're more than welcome to speak, but please move to the side. Other people, when they're trying to pass you, they have to cross the road, which is wrong. This is haram. Yeah, this is not fulfilling the rights of the road. And they take that, alhamdulillah, they say, okay, we'll move, and that's fine. But the problem is, what I'm saying is that, look, we're trying to create lots of resources for parents to re-embrace the art of raising children in line with Islam. So what we're doing is we're doing these toolkits. So the first one is about navigating RSE in schools, and then the next one's on building purpose in your children. The next one is on developing emotional resilience in children, so they don't fall for the LGBTQ or sexual relationship lie, because a lack of love in the home creates vulnerabilities in children. So talking about that, social media, pornography, child abuse, talking about the importance of fathers in raising children. We're talking about, for example, LGBTQ sexual relationships, how to discuss these with your children. We're talking about how to ensure your children doesn't become indoctrinated by the ideas in this society and to develop creative thinking in your children. So we're creating like 11 toolkits that will help to support parents to have discussions with their children, but also do activities, understand these ideas themselves, and then facilitate their changing the dynamic between them and their children, so that their focus is on inculcating Islam. Because the thing is, a lot of the times parents subcontract that responsibility to everybody else, like the madrasa and the maktab, which is not there for that reason. And other times they don't do it. So there's a vacuum there that's being filled. It's not that it's not being done, it's being filled by society. And so all of our children's cultural messaging about everything is being shaped by society and what they watch on television, what they read, what their friends say. And so we're getting a group of children who are growing up with Muslim names, and ritualistically following Islam, but there's no depth to their relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala beyond that. So we're trying to do that, and then also we're doing this madrasa maktab curriculum, which we're finalising now, which we've got some feedback on because we did a draft, sent it out to about 60 madaris and makatib. Now we're going to finalise that and create one for 7 to 10 and one 11 plus, 2 different programs aimed at children in madaris and makatib. And so I think we're trying to do work around that. We also, so every time we do a toolkit, we're doing launch. We did like a launch of this toolkit, which is the RSE in schools toolkit. We did 10 events across 7 cities, which just finished last week. The last one was in Manchester last week. And so we're really trying to engage parents in raising their children and taking responsibility for that role. And in a society where that's become something that is lost, that raising children is just about behavior management. It's not about inculcating a wider range of subjects and topics and shaping our children to become the best of who they can be in terms of as Muslims, and then who become leaders in our community, serving our community and holding up our community to become a vibrant community. So these are the things we're trying to focus upon over the next year, year and a half, inshallah.
What's the name of the organization?
So it's Muslim Family Initiative.
Okay. And remind me again, how long has it been running?
So initially we were called SRE Islamic. So we started in 2008, and then last year we changed the name to Muslim Family Initiative. And we widened our remit a bit to talk about a wider area of subjects, because we don't just talk about RSE in schools, although that's what we're known for, but we're trying to not just talk about RSE in schools, but also help parents to start discussing. Now, you said it's a big taboo for Muslim parents to discuss this in their homes. We want to try and cut through that taboo and say, actually, within a particular context, within an aim to protect your children from the rotten sexual messages of a hypersexualized society, it's important to have these discussions, as long as they're within a particular the framework and within the values of Islam that you're trying to inculcate with them. It's absolutely fine. So we want to go through some of these cultural taboos and try and ensure that children are really understand our values in relation to the values that they're being fed in society.
Is the organisation a British charity, or is it just a self-running organisation?
No, we're at the moment we're a company limited by guarantee. We're going to register as a CIC, right. But we would probably have problems if we were to register as a charity that we've been advised to. So we haven't registered as a charity.
Yeah. I was going to just actually come on to that and just say, have you had any visits or troubles from the local authorities or the police?
Yeah, a couple of years ago, I remember we were working with parents to try and challenge something in a school locally, and there were some teachers who identified as lesbian who were basically really trying to groom young Muslim girls. 82% of that school were Muslim girls, and they were trying to teach them about how normal it is to be a lesbian and promote that sort of those LGBTQ identities. And so we supported parents in challenging that, and as a result, those 2 teachers basically went off sick, and the school complained against me that I'd somehow been involved or supported a hate crime against these teachers. So I remember I got a call from actually a Muslim police officer.
Oh God.
And he basically said that I said, have I committed a crime? And he said, no, you haven't committed a crime. But we're just trying to, and he was trying to just, I don't know what he was trying to say, that I'm here to speak to you just to protect you, to keep you safe, and all these things. But I think he was just told to speak to me, and I said, look, he said, I watched your videos, and I know you haven't said anything that's illegal or problematic, or that these are perfectly fine. And he even admitted which school it was, and they made the complaint, which was actually, I didn't think he would admit to that, but it was quite interesting, that conversation that I had with him. But really, generally, because of the things that we say, we don't say for people to take the law into their own hands and kill people or attack people or all these things. We just say, look, we want to ensure our children understand our values. And I remember in school, a lot of the time what happens in schools is that a Muslim child says something like, I don't believe in LGBTQ, or it's a sin in our religion, and whatever. Whatever way they phrase it. Lots of times schools will start to say, look, you're homophobic, this is not right, this is bullying, and they'll give them detention or put them in isolation. And we always tell parents to challenge it. We've supported so many parents in challenges. Every single time we've supported parents to challenge it, we've won. And the school has apologized and said what we did was wrong. So I think we always say to parents, look, by speaking up on these issues, you're not going to get into trouble. There's no problem here. Your child's not going to be taken away. Yeah. You speak about these things sensibly through the guidance that we give you, then you're absolutely fine. We've been speaking about it since 2008, and we haven't really had any real trouble on this.
The first question is, have you felt a negative impact from the Muslim community in the work you're doing? And the second thing is, do you feel as if the Muslim community is too scared to speak about these issues because of the nature of how the Muslim community is perceived by the general society and is seen as a terrorist and don't want to be a part of English society and this kind of thing? So the first thing is any negativity from the Muslim community?
I'm sure there are parts of the Muslim community
but that you have felt.
Yeah, there's parts of the Muslim community that I feel. Yeah, there's parts of the Muslim community that are quite middle class Muslims. Yeah. Who maybe think these issues are, these are these are conservative issues, yeah, and these are not things, but these are a minority of people in our community, yeah, who believe that. Over the last maybe 2 years, I've spoken at so many different platforms. This year I was invited to speak at the Islamic Society of Britain annual camp in Oxford. I did just an event last week in a Barelvi mosque. I did an event at Deobandi Mosque at Salafi Masjid. I spoke at sort of Ikhwani type events all across the Muslim community in different types of organizations. Generally, they invite me because I don't speak about any issues of sectarianism, or it's issues that Muslims can agree upon. So the vast majority of Muslims are absolutely fine with what I say and are supportive of that. And I don't think there's a fear. I think fear isn't really there. What is the problem is not fear, it's apathy most of the time. Yeah, it's if you have Mufti Menk coming and delivering like a heartwarmer where people don't have to do anything as a result of after they leave, there's no real issue. Just you come, you get entertained, you leave, you get a good message, that's fine. But if you're going to a workshop that's going to ask you to do work afterwards, homework, yeah, you got to take action and do this and do that. Most parents are, I just can't be bothered. There's a real laziness amongst there. And one thing I find really interesting, I was speaking to somebody the other day, is there's a north-south divide. Yeah, the south is very apathetic. London, yeah, the events we did in London and the southeast were not as well attended as in the north. The north ones were very good.
But is that because of population or
no? There's fewer people up north than in London. London is the biggest centre of Muslims in the country. Yeah, singular place where you have the majority of Muslims in this country live in London. Yeah. So it's not about population, it's about apathy. There's a real apathy there. Yeah, and that's generally to lots of. Whenever you have events in London, yeah, I remember when I was saying to somebody the other day, look, when we were younger, there were very few events happening. The one time Yusuf Islam, when I was younger, came to the masjid to talk, there was a packed audience because very few events were happening in that masjid. That was the only event that masjid did in that year. Yeah. And I remember there was one, Siraj Wahaj came when I was younger, and we went to listen to him. Those were the only two events in like 10 years I remember happening in the local area that people attended in huge droves. Today, and what we should do when we got older and there were events happening around the country, we would travel across the country to go to them. Today, if there's an event that's just a half a mile down your road, is it going to be recorded? That's the first question people ask.
Yeah, that's true.
Is it going to be recorded?
Very true.
Is there a live stream? No, it's basically 5 steps from your house.
Yeah.
Oh, are you going to do it again sometime? No, it's 5 steps from your house. Are you going to like record it and then post it up on YouTube? No, it's 5 steps from your house. The problem is that there's a real laziness about it, and sometimes because there's so much happening that people don't take advantage of all those things. Yeah. And but the thing is, so the London events, some of them were very good, but generally the ones we had in Manchester, Leeds, Sheffield, they were the best. They were packed audiences, yeah, really good, really good interaction from people, really good questions, and so therefore I was saying to people, look, I want to focus on those areas which are more receptive. Yeah, even Crawley. I went to Crawley. Crawley was one area I went to. It's a younger Muslim community as well. Yeah, and there's a smaller Muslim community there. But I got a bigger audience in Crawley than I did to a masjid in East London,
SubhanAllah.
where there's like 50 times the population. Yeah. So the thing is, my thinking is that I wanted to do these events to see which areas are more receptive, and I'm going to focus on those for the future. So London is going to get fewer events, and the North is going to get many more events. But I really think is that as parents, I remember it always happens. I do an event in an area, and then I get an email like 2 days later to say, are you going to come back? And it's like, no, I just came a couple of days ago. It's like, why am I going to come back?
Priorities are wrong.
The priorities are wrong. People, I remember in one event, that I had, there was about 40 people registered and 8 people attended. Yeah. And I was speaking to my wife, and I said, look, next time what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a charge on those tickets. But when you put a charge on tickets, why are you putting charge on tickets? I remember once I was speaking to somebody and I put a nominal charge because I didn't want people to just register and not turn up. Yeah. And he said, you're depriving us of knowledge. And I said, no. I said, I remember Ramadan, I used to do event like free events, and people used to register. And so basically about 600 people registered. And I used to have to buy a Zoom extension license because I said, okay, I've got 100 licenses. And every time I did that, about 50 people attended. And I thought, this is such a waste of money. And I think as a community, we want everything for free, but we're not willing to actually. We're not people of commitment. We commit. We don't going to commit to something and then say, "I'm a person of my word. I'm going to come to that." But if we had a paid job to do, we would be there on time. We'd leave on time, and we'd probably stay longer and do it because I think as a community, we've been affected by the materialism of society. Really been affected by materialism of society. We've got to really rethink our priorities and think, if we are that materialistic, then who are we raising as our children? They're going to be even more materialistic. And I think the materialism is a big problem in our community. And I think there's this semblance of Islam in dress and in names and in beard size. And but the thing is, in reality, how has Islam penetrated our hearts beyond that outside appearance? And that's a big problem. It's a big problem for our community, and this is the sort of thing that our ulama need to be speaking about, because look, we're living in a society which is foreign to our ideal, our way of living. The way that the norms of society, especially as society has moved away from Christianity and moved away from religion, society has become more secular, more inward-looking, more individualistic, more selfish, more prioritizing of individual rights over collective responsibility. And therefore we are seeing the repercussions of that. And I think really I don't see that there is enough of a response from our community. There's some organizations that are doing work in this area, but actually every masjid needs to be working on this area.
Yeah, very
It
true.
needs to be a priority.
We're coming towards the end of the podcast.
Yes.
So I was just going to ask you in terms of the second question, which
Yes.
was, do you feel that there's a general fear amongst the Muslim community to
Yeah.
speak about these things and even challenge them in school?
I think sometimes there can be, we were speaking about before that there's certain times where some Muslims have this inferiority complex, yeah, and especially when there's Muslims who come from abroad and are migrants, and they may not be able to speak the language properly, or even they do speak the language properly, they still feel intimidated by somebody who was born here,
Yeah.
and they all still feel that they are the guests and they're our hosts, and we can't say anything against them. We just have to basically just not do anything to rock the boat. But the thing is, the reality is that we've got every right living in this country to express the same concerns and within the law as everybody else has. And those things should not stop us from doing that. But I think, as I said before, I think the biggest issue is not fear, it's apathy. The biggest thing is I just can't be bothered. So I sometimes see niqabi sisters and thobe-wearing brothers saying, our children are going to hear about this anyway, so what's the point? And I think, subhanAllah, what is this Islam? Is this our Islam today, where we are content with kufr being inflicted upon our children? These ideas and values which will shape them in one way or another, yeah. And you may see the repercussions of that in the future, and you're saying to me that you're not worried about that. This is like, when you see a munkar, you have to have even a hatred of it in your hearts. If the hatred of it in your hearts has left you, then what level of iman do you have? And I sometimes despair at sometimes some of the things that people say in relation to this. I remember once I went to an event there, and it was funny, but it was also very very shocking. One guy, he's originally from Pakistan. You could hear his accent, yeah, and he said, "Look, I don't care if my children commit zina, yeah, but if they become gay, then I'll have a problem with that." And I thought, this is such a wrong thing to say. Yeah. It's like the breaking of the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at whatever level should be hated.
Yeah.
You don't pick and choose whatever your feelings don't like and like. Yeah. And I didn't know what to say in response, because it's like, this is like everybody could hear, like you could hear audible gasps in the audience. It's like, but I think as a community, these are extreme. Sometimes that's an extreme example. But as a community, our priorities sometimes become, and I think sometimes it's a capitalist society tries to get you to focus on those things that force you to like struggle to make money, and sometimes also building the illusion in your mind that you need to have those two high-powered jobs in the family in order to provide for your family, because we need to have a particular standard of living. That standard of living is, we need to have a house on mortgage, we need to have a really big house, we need to have the 2 holidays a year, and all those things. Is that these priorities that, and they say, both of us have to be working, and then the impact on children as a result of 2 working parents it is problematic, because children need their parents for emotional security and for guidance in navigating life. And if they're absent and they're almost parenting themselves and raising themselves, then what are our children going to become as they grow up? And are the time we spent, nobody in the deathbed, nobody regrets the time they spent at work, the extra hour they spent at work. Nobody cares about that, but they will care about the children they leave behind, because our children we leave behind are the investment. It's our pension schemes for the future, for our position with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so if we don't focus on that, when on our deathbed, we're not going to regret the bit of money the extra money we didn't get, because none of that will take with us. But we leave our children behind, we leave our deeds behind, we leave the sacrifices that we made in this life for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala behind. And so I think we got to reorient it and reorient our priorities as a community and as individuals, as parents, and reclaim the art of raising our children in line with Islam.
Yusuf, Jazakallah khair for your time. How do people get in contact with you?
Okay, so you can go onto our website, which is muslimfamilyinitiative.org. An easier way to get onto the website, if you don't know how to spell initiative or struggle with how many I's there are in initiative, is www.protectyourmuslim.family.
Perfect.
So protectyourmuslim.family, and that'll get you to our website. And there you can sign up for any events that we have, or you can just download the new toolkit that we've just created. And there's a newsletter on there, so if you sign up for that, you'll be the first to hear about any of our future plans, events, and activities, inshallah.
Appreciate your time today. You've put context to a lot of the messages that I get and people that speak about it. I think it's really important that we do this on a regular basis. And there are other topics which you've just mentioned, which I will definitely be inviting you back again to speak about. Jazakallah khair, barakallahu feek. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.